Did you feel let down by the Canon EOS R1? Were you looking for a more powerful camera, a master of everything, a jack of all trades, a camera to beat the Nikon Z9 and the Sony Alpha 1? Well, you're going to want to stick around and watch this video because we're going to talk about a new camera, the Canon R1X. But before we get to the details, please subscribe to this channel. It doesn't cost you anything, helps this channel grow, and keeps you up to date on the latest camera coverage. I know what you're thinking. The paint isn't even dry on the Canon EOS R1. It's not supposed to ship until November the 26th, and the R5 Mark II isn't supposed to ship until, well, 3 weeks from today on August the 20th. And already we've got some bold rumors about a new camera, the Canon R1X. This isn't clickbait. I'm not making anything up here. Let's go ahead and turn our attention to what Andrew Reid said at EOS HD. I have it on good authority that the EOS R1 isn't the last word. Be it the R1X or the R1S, the true flagship is going to be a high-resolution monster. A high-resolution monster? You got to admit, that is pretty bold, isn't it? High-resolution monster. It kind of reminds me of those early rumors about the R1, which I just didn't believe. And they were so far back in the past, some 2 to 3 years, that there's no way that Canon had completely, well, solidified what the R1 was going to be, saying that it would do something like 80 or 85 megapixels, do 12K video and all that sort of stuff. It sounded like something that, well, you or I might do and get together and on a boring rainy day and sort of speculate what could be the weirdest, wildest set of specifications for the Canon EOS R1. Not based in reality, not based in return on revenue and all those sort of things that bean counters factor into when coming out with a new camera, toning things down so that they can make a buck. And then shortly after that, we started to get headlines coming from Canon rumors stating that the R1 would indeed be a master of everything, a jack of all trades, completely made up of new parts, nothing coming from the parts bin, that it would compete against the likes of the Nikon Z9 and Sony Alpha 1, easily beating them in both video specifications as well as stills capabilities. But what we got instead was the Canon EOS R1, and while it is a very good sports and fast action photography camera, and while wildlife photographers do use it, those that don't need a high resolution sensor like the one found in the R5 or the Nikon Z9, the R1 arguably, and I don't think I'm going out on an edge here by saying this, what we got in the R1 is far closer to what we'd expect from an R3 successor than a master of everything and a jack of all trades. So, where did this information come from? What sparked this? Well, it does go back to July the 18th, a day after Canon made the announcement of the Canon EOS R1. And while many of us were kind of sitting back, relaxing, watching all the videos and going on with our lives, Andrew Reid kind of had a thought. He felt like something was amiss, and he went back and looked at some of the previous rumors. He delved through the information. No more cripple hammer, quad pixel autofocused, 80 megapixels, internal ND filters, dual gain sensor readout, 18 plus stops of dynamic range, a global shutter, and an AI brain more intelligent than 1,000 wedding photographers. And yes, I know that seems rather, again, kind of out there, something that I would kind of, well, imagine you and I were sitting down having your favorite beverage, my favorite beverage, and just kind of speculating. What's the best possible camera that Canon could deliver in the R1? What would be the master of everything, jack of all trades in your view? And then ask each other person at the table, and some it might be 80 megapixels, which I didn't quite believe. A global shutter sensor. Well, to have a global shutter sensor and 80 megapixels, that's kind of bold. I think the only person that can do that right now would be Red. And what else? An AI brain? Well, the artificial intelligence in the R1 and the R5 Mark II are pretty good. But a lot of these specifications, I remember covering them as they came out, and a lot of them, they just didn't feel to pass the muster test. They came with a bunch of other specifications that really just didn't seem to balance or seem to fare very well. When you actually sat down and thought, okay, as a camera that people are going to be able to buy, that Canon is going to be able to manufacture, does it actually make sense in terms of how much it's going to cost and what we're willing to pay? But just a few days ago, Canon rumors did come out and say something interesting about, well, the 1DS. And he was maybe it was Richard. I don't know if it was Craig or Richard, but they were talking about previous Canon cameras. And if you'll recall, going back many years ago, Canon released the Canon 1D, and it had a 4.1 megapixel sensor. 4.1 megapixels. Not a whole lot. But then just a year later, they released not the 2D or the 1D Mark II, but the 1DS. And that camera had, compared to the 4.1 megapixel sensor, a high-resolution sensor offering 11.1 megapixels. That's considerably more. And it's not the only time that Canon's come out with multiple 1 series cameras. There was the 1DS, the 1DX, and there was multiple variants of that. And the 1DX, or sorry, the 1DC. Sorry, I'm getting things confused, and the C standing for cinema. If you go and look at the history of the 1 series, you'll see there's so many different variants, but it wasn't up until the last 10 years or so that Canon sort of played around with the idea, well, let's do a 1 series camera that's really dedicated to this type of use case scenarios, and let's do one in this case. So we had the 1D and the 1DS, which were 4.1 versus a high resolution version of 11.1, and then of course we had the 1D versus the 1DC, which was based on stills photography versus one that could also do video as well. So going back to what Andrew Reid said, and this is really important because if you actually read everything he said, and I recommend doing that, because the problem is when I pull quotes out, it's to highlight certain aspects of what he's saying. But I've seen this with the video that I published earlier this morning. People just, it's amazing how many people just hear what they want to hear. They listen for what they want to hear, whether it's what they want to hear or whether it's they're listening for what they don't want to hear and then commenting on that. I want to go back to this statement by Andrew Reid. I have it on good authority here, folks, that the EOS R1 is not the last word, be it the R1X or the R1S. A true flagship camera is going to be a high-resolution monster. I remember Andrew Reid, he broke that story about the EOS R5, the Mark I, overheating back in 2020, and I remember this blowing up. He had boldly said he shot with it, he put it in a freezer, took it out, tried to shoot with it again, and it was still in overheat mode. And I kind of wondered if this was one of those sort of made-up stories, and Andrew Reid very quickly posted the photos showing this to be the case. And the one thing I've learned about Andrew is, while he can be a bit abrasive, he can be bold, one thing Andrew isn't is somebody who's intentionally misleading us, who's going to lie to us. He presents information to us that he believes is true. And so when he says good authority, we don't know where that's coming from. And I can tell you from somebody who has sources of my own, it's very important to be vague here because you need to protect your sources. Now, this source could be somebody working at Canon that he's talking about good authority. Could be somebody connected to the supply chain. We don't know. And because we don't know that information, because we don't have a track record here, and because I have not been able to validate this from my other sources, and let me just quickly take a look to see if any of them have chimed in at this point. And nope. Now, one said, I don't know anything about this. Okay. So at this point, let me just check one more thing. No, nothing here either. Nothing on the wires. And keep in mind that what Andrew Reid put out was a week ago. So I was hoping to validate more information between now and then, but what we're starting to see is other news sources, print magazines are starting to pick this up, and so I want to come out here and kind of level set you with this. So let's do a bit of a reality check here. How likely is this? Well, as I said, we've seen Canon release multiple 1 series cameras in the past. Not a whole slew of them, like 3 at a time, but definitely at least 2. So it's certainly plausible. And there is potentially a good reason for doing this. There's no high-resolution camera on the Canon platform right now other than the R5 Mark II. If we look at Sony, they can do 61 megapixels. And both Canon and Sony have developed 100 megapixel sensors. And I know when it comes to a full-frame camera, you can start running into potential engineering challenges when dealing with such a high resolution for such a small sensor, especially when there's medium format. And Canon, they've come out and said that, look, we have no interest in doing medium format. So the paint hasn't exactly dried on this one yet. It's still relatively new. Keep your ears and eyes open for anything related to the R1X, the R1S, another R series camera, 1 series camera coming out that could be potentially happening in 2025. Maybe alongside, maybe they'll do an announcement of a new R1 series camera, an R1X and an R1S, alongside the announcement of the Canon EOS R5C, the Mark II. But what we do know right now is that we have the Canon EOS R1 for $62.99 and the Canon EOS R5 Mark II for $42.99. They're both available for pre-order, and I have the pre-order links in the description down below for both cameras. Although if you're like me, you probably bought the R5 Mark II. By and large, everything that I've seen from my own pre-orders is that it's about a 10-to-1 ratio between the R5 pre-orders and the R1 orders in favor of the R5 Mark II. If you do purchase using my pre-order links, just to let you know, I do get a small commission back. But you don't have to pay anything. You get the same price that's advertised. You're not directed to some strange website, have to put in any codes. Just click on the link and it takes you there. And to be honest with you, the reason why I have this ask is this channel doesn't nearly make enough off the YouTube ads. I would say I probably make about 10% off YouTube ads, and the rest of it comes from pre-order and affiliate links. So if you're interested in buying it from Adorama or B&H or even Amazon.com, I've got the links in the description down below. A big thanks to all of you that have done that. I also want to take this as an opportunity to give a shout out to local camera stores. I was recently in Downtown Camera in Toronto talking to Patrick, and very good gentleman. He's been in this industry for probably longer than I have, many, many decades, as working in the enterprise space. If you're looking to purchase in Canada, and he ships nationwide, give him a call, because one thing, not only does he know his stuff, but just ask him, say, Simon sent me and I'm looking at getting this or this. Any chance you can sharpen your pencil? You know, he always looks after his customers, especially ones I send his way. And if you're not from Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Germany, Poland, England, France, and all these other wonderful countries, if you've got a really good local camera store, then do reach out to them, because they definitely appreciate your business. And I certainly appreciate you tuning in and watching. So thank you very much. I wasn't planning on doing another video today. I put one out earlier this morning, which did prove to be a little cantankerous in the comments. I don't know why people get so wrapped up over market share, because at the end of the day, we don't care. What we care about is having good gear, you know, a good camera that's going to last forever. You know, unless your camera company falls below about 5% market share, then you might worry about new models coming out. You might worry about if the company's an ongoing viability. But this is the Canon 70D. I bought it as soon as it came out in August of, what was it? Was it 2012? It was either 2012 or 2013. So it's over 10 years old, and it still works. We still use it. My son, for his channel Planet Liam, is, you know, he's putting out his own videos, and he's really challenging himself. He's learning, and I really appreciate seeing him learn some skills. But these cameras last a very long time. Now, you and I, we might have the exact same capabilities that we're looking for. We might shoot the exactly the same type of stuff. We probably don't, but let's assume we do. I might say, you know, the R5 II is the perfect camera for me, and you might say, no, the Nikon Z8 is the perfect camera for you. It doesn't mean that either one of us is wrong. It just means that there's a certain set of things that happened in our lives, in our decision points, in the way we think, that we bought the camera that we did, and the fact that we like it and we think it's great, that is great. I don't understand why people have to slam other people for liking the cameras that they like or anything like that. I mean, it's just silly, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, if we're making comments like that, then we're not out there actually shooting, getting value out of what we have. And I'm sure someday this will be an antique. But anyhow, thank you so much for tuning in. Have yourself a great day, and we'll see you again soon.